Welcome to the Future Generations Podcast, providing you with the world-changing content necessary to inspire you, your family, and our planet to a life of optimal health potential. We'll help you make the choices that powerfully influence the lives you bring into this world. It's time to strengthen our resolve to do better now and for our future generations with your host, Dr. Stanton Hom.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Future Generations Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom, and I have with me I'm so excited, Carrie. I'm so excited because I have this, I've watched so much of your content, and I feel like you have gone through so many paths of medicine, quote, that actually maybe no one else ever has, and no one else has seen what you've seen. And then, I mean, maybe coming full circle to right before we actually hit record, you talking about feeling like prayers, feeling individual prayers and supernatural healing is something that I can't wait to get into. But everybody who follows me and who's a part of our community will know the name Dr. Carrie Madej and will know what your work has been. And I'm excited to share you with our community. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself and just give us a little background on who you are. But then I'd love to just go everywhere and like I said, anywhere and everywhere with you. And I appreciate you sharing this time with us.
Well, Dr. Stan, I'm happy to be back with you because I remember that interview we did together. I forgot how long ago it was, but I really felt your heart.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And I really connected with you in that way. So that's why I said, yeah, I would love to do an interview with you. You're one of my first interviews since my plane crash.
Do you remember that interview? How many times that Zoom got kicked off and Alec couldn't come back?
100%.
And I think you kind of chuckled because you're like, this kind of is what happens to me. And for those of you who don't know, like you are one of the I mean, you've seen behind the curtain so much that you become public enemy number one, you know, in many respects for the narrative and for those, you know, for the cartel. And so when many of us saw the plane crash, we were like, oh my goodness, like of all the people, it wasn't surprising. And, you know, like it just, you get all those kind of suspicions. I don't know if you want to talk much about that. I haven't heard much about that, but to see you heal and to see you navigate what you have, it's just a beautiful testament to not only the brilliance that we are, but to also the being that you are. It's pretty phenomenal.
Well, let me back up a little bit here. Just
of course,
this is a kind of a cool story in a way. So, you know, for people that know who I am, I've been outspoken about these shots and what's inside them because I went to meetings where they discussed these ingredients and why they wanted them, and then also scientific meetings. You know, I didn't speak up for a long time. I was in Dominican Republic, and while I was there, I was frustrated because when I tried to speak up earlier, no one was listening. It's timing. Everything's timing. And so while I was there, I had this restlessness in my body, and I felt like I was going to jump out of my skin. And then the day the lockdown happened in March 2020 is strange because all of a sudden this weight lifted off my body, and this message was, now we can begin. I'm like, what? Wow. And so when I saw the ingredients of the injections, I then understood everything that I went through, all the traumas, all the meetings, all the knowledge that felt that was suppressed because nobody would listen. But now the timing when I spoke after that point, there was people could hear it because it was timing, right? And so I say that because fast forward to about a few months ago, I started to get the same restless feeling again. I'm like, uh-oh, something else is going to happen. This restless feeling like something big is going to happen. I didn't know what. And of course, on June 26th, in a small plane, the pilot and I ended up crashing just 7 miles away from our destination. And I'll go back into that. But after that point of surviving and all these miracles that happened, that weight lifted off my shoulders again, like almost like, okay, this is the next step. And I feel and I'll go back over the crash again, but I
Please.
feel that the things that happened, all of a sudden, what I prayed for was that we would connect with God collectively and individually, of course, and that be this, in the end of this 2022, there would be a great revival, because there's the only answer to this evil for us to connect with our Creator and to be spiritually mature, because we're dealing with a spiritual battle here, and a revival needs to happen. And so on the one Zoom prayer meeting, there's about 8,000 people that tuned in live to pray. And I'm like, if we could keep that momentum going, because I could feel the prayers and it shows on my body. And that's why I look so good after a plane crash.
Wow.
It is not me. It's a testament to God and the prayers. So, so I felt like that was another like a turning point, a pivotal point. So what was meant for bad has been turned to good, and I want to keep that momentum going. So I'm going to have another prayer group meeting this Wednesday. Just, it's going to be live stream. Anybody wants to pray, we're going to pray together. We're going to praise God and pray together, because miracles happened when the last prayer group happened. It's going to happen again. So to the plane crash, I can tell you that when we were leaving from Clearwater Airport, or Tampa, St. Pete, Tampa Airport, and going to somewhere called Noonan, Georgia, a little tiny town. Everything was fine until 7 miles from the destination. All of a sudden, there's engine trouble. Air traffic control was notified. They said, well, we're going to divert you to this other airport, which I thought, well, I don't know, my mind, I thought, why don't we just try to land somewhere? But they diverted us. So we went to Warm Springs, but now this engine was going only 1,500 RPMs, which is not enough. It was really shaky. The pilot did the normal procedures you're supposed to: make sure the fuel's rich, turn on the fuel, the fuel pump, make sure all the fuel tanks are open. We were descending from 8,000 feet to 5,000 feet, so sometimes there's icing that happens from the altitude, so the carb heater was turned on, those kinds of things. Nothing. Okay, so we're gliding, and then we see the new airport's runway. We see it. Now I was praying the whole time. I was praying really hard, and as I was praying, then all of a sudden, when we see the airport runway, the engine just literally went from 1,500 RPMs to 0. Like, saw the needle go, boom, which is strange. And then we don't glide, we start dropping. And where we were dropping was where there were woods. Now, all around us, there was farmland, but only there were woods where we started to drop. And we could not go where the farmland was because power lines were there. So we were forced to crash into the woods, the trees. And I'm thinking, God, the trees, really? And at that moment, also, you think, time, space is distorted in a trauma, right? Lots of things can happen. And so at that moment, I remember a message I got from God well over 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. And the message was, you won't die in a plane crash. You won't leave this world in that way, which is a weird message, right? Wild. So I remember in this while we're crashing slowly, thinking, I'm not going to die. And I look at the trees going, well, it's really going to hurt. It's really going to hurt. It's going to hurt really bad.
Oh, man.
But it helped me give me a calmness, right? And so I remember telling the pilot, did you try to start the engine again? And he tried, and it did do a little thing, maybe a propeller went, I don't know, but nothing. And so I put my hand on the right side of the plane, put my hand on the ceiling, and I was praying to Yeshua HaMashiach, we are covered in your blood. We need you, save us. And my whole being, I was yelling at my whole being, right? Roaring it. And in that moment, because everything is distorted, I see a hand go under the plane, a hand go on top of the plane, and then 2 wings surround the sides of the plane. I knew he had us. And I was just, but so in a way you could really panic. I had a calmness, but I was still praying. And so all of a sudden we had to dive into we're crashing into the trees, and the pilot has some direction with the plane, but not much. It's crashing. So in the woods, there's a logger's trail. So what that means is they were harvesting trees, and there's a little like pathway. So he says, I think maybe I could try the loggers trail, but he did say, he was like, I'm sorry, we're going to crash. He was honest. Yeah. And I'm glad he was honest. So we started going through the loggers trail. I mean, I don't know how he saw, because I saw pine tree, pine tree, pine tree. I don't see anything but branches. So I know that God's hands helped us guide that, because we would have exploded. So then all of a sudden, we don't slide when we crash. And I decided to look at the pilot when the final impact, because I didn't want to see the final. But because I turned my body to him, I didn't get the facial impact that he got. So I just got in the side, which was all distorted in my back of my head. So I watched his, the impact on his head. And then when we crashed, it was like almost the movies you see. And then when I realized I was alive, it was a really crazy grunting breathing, because you get the wind knocked out of you, almost the life knocked out of you. And I wasn't sure if the pilot was alive for a minute or a second. I don't know how long of time until he started to breathe again. But I had to take inventory. This is the doctor that took over of me, right? Like triage. And where we crashed, if we went 10 to 15 feet further, the big trees would have started again. So we crashed in the perfect location. So now the air traffic control knew, he told them that we were crashing. He told them that we had engine failure. Okay, all that happened. So I'm thinking in my head, well, after I'm looking, I'm like, my foot on the left side the foot was actually turned 120 degrees to the opposite direction. It was not really it was just by my skin. It was still there. I knew, that was the major thing on me. I knew other things were happening, but that's all I knew. And then, the pilot had a lot of head trauma, and he was just in pain. We were both in pain and hard time breathing. And I was like, is the plane going to catch on fire? I didn't see any evidence of that, but I knew I had to take pressure off of my leg, because the bones, if they cut through the skin, I could have bled out.
Yeah.
And so I knew the first thing is I got to take pressure off my leg. So I was able to extricate out of the plane and then lean my body back on the wing. And I laid on the wing with my foot in the cockpit. And it was really hot, really, really hot. So over time, I had burns through my clothes from laying on the wing. So then I'm thinking, certainly, like the movies, there should be some sirens. Nothing, and nothing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not looking for us. Now, the pilot was, disoriented, so I had to keep reorienting him, because he had a lot more head trauma. Like, no, we're not in a dream. We got in a crash. Okay, And then I realized, dear God, no one's looking for us. So what we found out is the locator never went off. Wow. Air traffic control never notified anybody, or FAA. On FlightAware, it looks like we landed, but we didn't land. We didn't land anywhere near. We found a phone and called 911, and the dispatch, of course, I don't think they were used to it. We're in a very, very rural area, and asked about COVID status and health insurance and all kinds of stuff. I said, do you understand plane crash? Wow. If you don't get here soon, we're done. We're not going to survive. We don't know if this plane's going to blow up. I mean, you've got to get somebody here. So I guess she was thinking in her own way that she kept saying, we have someone coming to you, but really they had no idea where we were. They were just looking around where the airstrip was, but they were looking in the wrong direction. So I thought they could pin us from the cell phone. No. So after 25 minutes, I said, you're lying to us. You don't know where we're at. And she's like, no. I said, that's it. I said, I'm going to hang up, because when you're on 911 with a cell phone, at least the cell phone we had, you can't do anything on the cell phone. You're locked out. So I said, do not call us back, because if they call you, you're locked out. I said, you cannot call us back. Please do not call us back. We need to use the phone. I need to pin us. So I pinned our location, but I couldn't pin it to 911. I pinned it to one of the pilot's family members. So then the dispatch called back. I said, okay, this person has our pin. Please call them. And by the time we got them to see that, this is about 45 minutes goes by. So then, so then sirens after that 45 minutes, we hear something, but then the dispatch says, listen, we can't find you because it's a wooded area and the pin only gets so close. So the way they're really going to find you, they said they've got 20 units they can't figure out. There's no entry point in, there's no smoke, nobody knows where you're at. So she said, you have to yell with everything you have. And so I did. God gave me the lungs and the voice. It wasn't me, because I yelled so, Lord, it was a roar that I was impressed. And the dispatch says, Carrie, you got to take a breath. Oh my gosh. I said, no way. This is my last chance. You don't get it. And so eventually a sheriff with a megaphone, and I, was yelling, connected, and he came and he said, you know what? We could have never found you. He said, there's just no evidence of where you were or where you landed, which is, all these things adding up. That's to me, that's like it's like a demonic attack, but I don't think a human did that, but a demonic attack for sure. All these things lined up. And by the time they could get the crew to us, again, more time was elapsing because they had to cut down some trees. And then they found a farmer with like a 4x4 bush hog, something, with a cigar hanging out of his mouth. And I remember they're extricating me. And then at this time, I became a little more fragile and weak because the pain was excruciating. You would not believe. And so they had to, reorient my foot the right way. And it was awful. And so then they got me on a backboard, and then they had to get us out of the woods. So this farmer, and I was looking up thinking, this guy's got a cigar, these overalls on, like, what is happening? This is so surreal. And so the first thing I said to the first responders is, whatever you do, don't give me the COVID shots. Put it everywhere. Put it in my shot. They're like, wait, what? There's nothing, anything. I was just, do not give me the COVID shots. And then the second thing was, please give me some pain meds because I'm going out of my mind in pain. And they did. They were able to put me in an ambulance, but the paramedics were dry heaving. So they took a little bit longer before they could contain themselves. Some people actually threw up because of my foot. I just think it would look that bad, but I guess so. I have to laugh at these things to keep the brevity, right? So then they got to the air transport and got to the triage, and they did a good job with the triage. And so I can say that the Friday before this crash, I have a weekly Zoom with some members, and we were talking about, I said, listen, around the world, I feel like there's a lot of demonic attacks happening. So we need to be mobilized and fight the spiritual battle with prayer. So let's do an online prayer group, and let's do that. So they said, okay. So Friday, the memo went out. So it was for that Monday. So of course the crash happened Sunday. And then that following Monday, the prayer group ended up being for us and it live streamed. So my group was laughing. They're like, do you understand you set up this prayer meeting for yourself? It's just like you had this intuition. And I can say that, when I went to the triage too, they were talking about a woman that they thought was going to be paralyzed. I'm like, ooh, well, thank God that's not me. And it ended up being me. Wow. And they said my name. And I'm like, God, no, this will not happen. So throughout this experience, I think it was mental fortitude, because every time I said, that's not my story, not happening, right? And then there was a big prayer group at about 6:00 on Sunday as well, when people found out they were in the crash. And around that time, I have a picture of this, it was around 7, all these people kept coming by my hospital room, like nurses or techs, and they said, wow, your hair looks beautiful. I'm like, what? Because I look like crap. Hair looks beautiful. So somebody FaceTimed me saying, doing the prayer group, and I looked, and the light came from behind the window. It was just surrounding. And it was the time of the people doing the prayer group. So around this time too, the vertebral, the orthopods came in, and they said, well, we looked at your x-ray again, the same one. They said, we've looked at it wrong, or didn't look at it right, whatever you want to say. And we determined that you're no longer high risk, and we're taking you off of spinal precautions, like you're not at risk of being paralyzed. So that's a miracle, right?
They don't do that, right? Because you're an osteopath, right? You're an osteopath. I'm a chiropractor.
Well,
you don't go from that like red alert. I don't know the real conventional terms. Like you're going to be paralyzed to without some sort of like either.
I was off all spinal precautions. Yeah.
That is wild.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to be careful because I had 5 vertebral fractures.
For sure.
It ended up being mild, but then so the next day when the big prayer group went out, I literally could feel, and I had my surgeries post-surgery, and several times after this icy, fiery, I don't know how to explain this. We don't have words for it. This sensation on my leg that was so amazing, so pleasant, so pleasing. And it was like feeling the healing happening in real time and no pain. And it was when people were praying, or sometimes it's just a few people in the room. Every time I could feel it. I'm like, I said, God, you are amazing, right? And then every day I was determined to get stronger. And it's the mental fortitude plus God and the prayers that did that. And I was discharged from the ICU 5 days after the accident, so straight from the ICU.
Yeah.
So I was able to stand from my own vertebral x-rays, and they said, you're the first person we've taken from an ICU that was able to stand, leaning to do their x-rays. We've never had this happen before. So I'm like, I'm ready to do this, So I can say that there were many instances of miracles that happened. I could feel them. I could see them. I know God was protecting. And so that means I have more accountability and responsibility, right? And I was so happy to hear from just a few people that it renewed their faith in God, renewed their faith in prayers and miracles. And if that happened to even a small group, then for me personally, I can only speak for, it was worth it if we can keep that momentum going, because we need God, and we need to realize who and what we are and our potential to overcome what is happening in the world, because we have death and carnage happening around us. You know that? Mm-hmm. And we need to see that it's not all bad, and we need to see what we can do about it. So that's how I'm looking at it, and that's what I'm doing. And also, right now I'm getting treatments too that I did not go the traditional route, right? Mm-hmm. I was only a few days. I take a muscle relaxer and something called gabapentin, and that was it. Mm-hmm. So now I take Alka-Seltzers just about once a day now, the original Alka-Seltzers for pain, and that's all I need. Wow. So that's great. And I was really fortunate to have a tribe of people that offered their homes, their food, their care. It takes a tribe to help heal wounds and, resources. And then I had somebody from a company called Juvent, and there's it's a micro impact plate, and that's awesome. I mean, wow. I am so impressed with that technology. It's easy to stand on it. Yeah. It stimulates stem cells, mesenchymal cells. I mean, I felt less pain after 1 day of use of just standing on it with my one foot.
What did you break in your foot?
I'm sorry. The tibia and fibula were comminuted, so it was shattered and then completely broken off. So the above the ankle more. So the foot was literally separate from the entire leg, and that's why I could turn that way. What is unbelievable is that I have full feeling in my foot right now.
That's crazy.
And I can move all my toes. I mean, I don't know what the rest of my foot, but right now, for that to happen, that is, you and I know, that's fantastic. So they put pins and plates. Luckily, the swelling wasn't too bad where they didn't have to do external rotation. It was just external fixation. They were thinking about putting a halo in, and that was another way. I'm like, nope, not happening. In my head, not happening. Foot, you're gonna be able to do the surgery without external fixation, and hallelujah. I'm over the moon. So yeah.
I think this story is my goodness. It's like it brings up. I had a comment once on my on like our reviews, and it said less religion and more science or something like that. And I just said, if you don't recognize that I'm interviewing Dr. Carrie Madej right now, that if you wanted to break down every physiological pathway that you know is running your system and it's healing right now, you probably could in a very academic way. And if you took almost every scientific guru of our history, you look behind the curtain and there's a depth of reverence for religion, for spirituality, for the intangible, invisible, immeasurable nature that is the web of not only the entire cosmos but us. And there are moments in time where knowing what you know, and maybe even like calling the pocket, like there are demonic forces in the world today, demonic attacks that are, And then all of a sudden, like a day later, you're navigating one that you were calling to before a prayer on Monday. Maybe a question I have for you is, how many people would have been on the prayer had you not been on in the accident versus
nowhere near that amount, right? Nowhere near that amount. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't the only Zoom. There's mm-hmm. another one, I think Robin Openshaw did. She said mm-hmm. it broke Zoom. There were so many people.
Yeah.
Another one, somebody else did that. I don't even know all the others, mm-hmm. but think about, when did somebody willingly after work decide, I'm going to go spend an hour on Zoom to pray?
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. That's what that spark I was hoping and praying that we would get.
And it's even in that moment, those are the people that were there, but the domino effect of the wake of prayer and the wake of healing and the wake of possibility and miracles that happens as a result of a session or several sessions like that mm-hmm. is incalculable. You can't calculate the impact of that. But I think I want to ask you about, in those moments, the level of conviction that you know not only that you're not going to die, but mm-hmm. that when they're telling you things like you're going to be paralyzed, or the different things that they're basically their prognosis of your journey of what it's going to mm-hmm. be, and you being able to stand in that moment and say, not me. Yeah. And in my opinion, yes, like miraculous commanding God, commanding the will of God, or maybe requesting through prayer these miracles to go through your body, but physiologically, that's something that
it's huge.
You
mm-hmm.
had in that moment the conviction to command in your own physiology.
I know that will not be my story. I refuse that story, right? And the thing is, that's why I love the work of Dr. Emoto, Masaru
mm-hmm.
Emoto.
Yep.
I mean, proving that with intention and words, how we change the crystalline structure of water. That means we change the crystalline structure of us and what's around us. And that means others can influence that too. I mean, I was very fortunate to have good elementary school teachers. They did the seedling experiment. This was the 1979, 80, where we had 3 groups of seedlings and everything was the same except one group we had to say with all of our might how we hated these seedlings or ugly, whatever. Wow. Middle group, nothing. The other group, with all of our intention, how we loved them, they're beautiful, etc. And after a month, I remember hearing my teacher say under her breath, I never thought this would work, because the difference of the one we said ugly things and the difference with the beautiful things was extraordinary. They were brown and wilted, and these were flourishing. Just our words, children's words with intent. So again, this shows you our potential that we completely ignore all the time, the placebo effect, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The other thing is touching, because when in the field, some of the sheriff and I think one paramedic and the air flight medic said to me, what can I do for you? Every time I said, please hold my hand. And when they held my hand, the pain went down, because wow, the power of touch is healing. Mm-hmm. We forget that. And we don't touch each other 6 feet away. Doctors don't touch people anymore. I mean, and as a chiropractor and as osteopath, wow, you need to touch the body, because there's information, and then we know that the power of touch is important. And the Bible talks about it as laying on of the hands, right? So that was another powerful thing, because I said, it helps me, it helps my pain. And I think it surprised some of them in the field. And they're like, oh yeah, you need that human touch. I'm like, no, it's more powerful than you realize. It helped me a lot. We need to go back to these basic things. And this actually reinforced my osteopathic training, mm-hmm. with the structure and function are interrelated. Because everything in my training went back, as you know, from chiropractics, about the importance of that. Because the trauma of the body hitting, it wasn't on the x-rays, it wasn't the CAT scans, it is on a level that doesn't show up. But that is, I don't have words for that. And the fascia that's affected, and the microcirculation, and I haven't gone to my chiropractor yet. That helps me, because now I have leg length discrepancies, mm-hmm. all these things. But traditional medicine ignores that. And I'm praying that 2 things from this incident is that I hope that we can help show this as a showcase of the importance of prayer and reconnecting to God, and miracles are real, and prayers. And then also looking at what we've been called as quackery, right?
Yep.
Chiropractic, osteopathy, holistic methods. I didn't need pain meds using these other things. We have ways of healing our body much better than what traditional medicine has offered. I'm not banging it because, I was trained traditional and osteopathic. So trauma is important. We need that. But we also need to know that all these other beautiful ways, and they work, and why do they work?
Yeah.
That's important.
I've been charging a lot of chiropractors, like just speaking into them the value of who we are at this point, because so much is going, which, very conveniently and sometimes also very miraculously for some people, like telemedicine, telehealth, like the ability to have like a Zoom consult like we did for my son yesterday, because he's potentially having some challenges with his eyes at 4 months old. That is great that we could do a video consult. Like, it's awesome because it's going to ship us to a pediatric ophthalmologist, and we're grateful when we need the system. But a gift and a curse, and I would say it's one of the biggest blessings that you're recognizing now of chiropractic and osteopathy, of these hands-on type care, is that it will never be virtual. It will never be like distance. It will never be like social, like whatever. Like I used to joke, like, what do we do? Put an activator on the end of a stick and like jab people in the neck to get them adjusted. It's like, no, we are actually therefore tasked, like we have been tapped on the shoulder, literally, physically, to step into a role of leadership in this time frame, to recognize that healthcare in our model not only heals at a miraculous rate, not only like literally inspires this brilliance and beauty and infinite wisdom of the body, but we are more essential and more necessary and should be standing as leaders in this moment, not those that are bowing down to the authorities, not those that are kind of trying to make it, trying to skirt that center line of like being accepted in this kind of whatever weird social experiment that we're in. And recognize that at our roots, like, maybe that was the gift, right? Maybe that was the gift of all the condemnation that we've had for so long, because we know what's at stake, because we wouldn't be in practice today if it wasn't for people who were those kind of forefathers and mothers who were jailed for practicing medicine without a license, who were literally vilified and demonized for so many years and decades from this cartel of system, to let us practice now. And in this moment, we should be stepping up into a role that I believe you, in my opinion, have stepped into in a far greater way than many of us. It's why you've become a beacon for so many of us, because you come from both worlds, but you are speaking to this side, and you are literally living through this experience that is proving virtually everything that we ever had theorized within the model of care that we actually, that's amazing.
But you're right about that. It's really was a theory, because I didn't go through a lot of these things myself, but I believed in it. But now, whoa, it is just, there's no words to describe when it happens to yourself, and I'm on the other side of the bed. And humbling is not, I wish we had better words than that, but I am humbled when, to me, like, now I understand why the angels were like, holy, holy, holy in front of their creator, God, our creator. I'm like that. I'm like, whoa, you are miraculous, you are powerful. And I understand why I had to go through that. Not fun. Not fun. And I'm never flying in a small plane again. Not doing it. But I went to Florida to get some other treatments, some holistic treatments. And I went on 2 weeks after my surgery, I went on a Delta flight. I had no fear. It's okay. But not a small plane.
Yeah.
No.
So you're about 3 weeks out.
So 19 days.
And let's just go like your clinical like expectation of somebody who just
20.
Probably conventionally would go through this experience versus what you've experienced. If you could kind of compare and contrast what you would expect. Like, some people might still be in the ICU.
100%. I know, comparing to patients I had with just one vertebral fracture, their pain was so extreme they wouldn't be functional. Just one.
Yes. Not 5.
Yeah, and a leg like this, yeah, people wouldn't be. No, I mean, I know that they would just be laid up in bed for months, and the swelling would be extreme. I don't have swelling really.
Wow.
The pain. I can say that the trauma aspect, the PTSD, would be another thing. I mean, my face really healed so fast. Yeah, and I couldn't. So when I first happened, I couldn't. So lifting my hand like this was about all I could do.
Yeah.
And there's no way I could even lift my hand up here. It took me forever just to brush a little bit of hair. I couldn't do anything. I really was really dependent on everybody for everything. And I was like, this can't go on. So it was, and I know that a lot of people would, they could have been in the hospital still. I did have head trauma. Maybe a little bit of my words are a little garbled here and there, but it's really good considering. Whiplash, all kinds of things like that. My broken ribs, but they don't hurt now. Broken hand, it doesn't hurt now. Broken orbit, but you can see it's already healed. This isn't, if I decided I'm going to follow traditional medicine, and I'm not knocking it because I was trained in it too. I know the outcome of traditional medicine because I've been there. I've seen what happens to the patient. It's a long journey, and you may not ever recover back to what you used to be. And I was like, no, not doing that, because I know there are other ways. And, of course, I was trained in integrative and holistic medicine too. And this was the time I could start to try out new things like something called scalar wave, this Juvit plate, things like that. I had a cold laser at home that I was able to use that it was helpful. And these are all things that we can, as people with outside of the medical system, can choose to do on our own. We can take our health in our own hands. I couldn't get into seeing my chiropractor because that would be the first thing I would do. But once I get back, he's number one on the list, because my leg lengths are all messed up.
Yeah.
So I get that much difference. But, let's take that, right? So, Dr. Stan, if somebody has like this much leg length difference, what's going to happen with their pain in their neck, their back? I mean, tell everybody what's going to happen. I know.
It's a simple conversation of like, if you were to build a home, right, and you have a faulty foundation, then everything else is going to have some sort of compromise or compensation that no one accounts for. I do this to my patients all the time. Where
and pain. Just say the
The
pain.
debilitating pain. Yeah, the debilitating pain that will happen as a result of stress and strain on a structure that's supposed to be as adaptable, balanced, and mobile as possible, right? Simple.
And thank God that you know that. And I'm grateful that I was trained that way, because if I was the average person, I would think my pain is only from my injuries. It's not. I knew that I was all crooked. Yeah. And so part of my ability to get through was knowing this pain is not from the injury. This pain is because I'm completely crooked. Yeah. And so I know what pain is from that, but it's only because I was trained. And I was, again, sitting here thinking, I feel so bad for all the people out there that have no idea.
It's crazy. I was about to say that we have a very strong prenatal and pediatric practice. Right. That is our specialty. We're one of 62 practices in the world that have the academic and clinical training that we do. And I teach kids as young as 8, 9, 10, and I show them their films. I show them their x-rays. And sometimes they walk in the room and they're like, that's not good. Right. And I'm like, wait, are you a doctor?
If a kid can tell.
A kid, right? So I would kind of joke with them. I kind of do this kind of thing where I'm like, are you a doctor? And they're like, whoa, I'm not a doctor. No, I'm not a doctor. And like, I'm like, but what's crazy is your doctor may never take that image.
Exactly.
Or maybe further, they may see the image and they may say, there's nothing wrong, right?
I will tell you that happens all the time.
And I was like, but you're 8. And you walk in and you're like, that's not. So it was like, I need you to recognize that you, 8-year-old, are far more of a doctor for yourself, especially in this setting.
That's awesome.
And it's cool because we are training these kids to recognize that they, one, need to use their own life experience, their lived experience, their own sovereignty of their own humanness, but that even when things are going to hell or something's wrong, that they can decipher those things. And when they can, it's like they throw them back at me sometimes. You know, I'm recognizing this is my own perception. This is my own lived experience.
I love that.
That's a life changed and transformed, right? That's a family tree transformed as a result of just a simple thing that we do literally every day. Something that I wanted to ask you, because this is something that I've said for a long time, and many of us do, right? Because like we're grateful for the healthcare system when there's an emergency. That's where they're at their best. And look where you're at. You are in as bad as it can be without dying, right? Essentially as bad as the situation, like land in a wood in woods where they can't find you. They're not looking for you. You have to scream. And somebody with a megaphone, and like for all intents and purposes, you guys shouldn't have made it, like at all.
No.
And it's when Western conventional medicine is supposed to be the best in the world, and here you are in this moment for a couple days, maybe conventional stuff, but you go the opposite direction.
It was just for the surgery, and that was it. And the scans was good to know, right? But the surgery, and then I knew so I wasn't the best patient between you and I.
Yeah. Because we're not. Yeah.
So I was like, listen, you don't want me here. I don't want to be here. You can discharge me from the ICU, can't you? Because I knew, that was it. I mean, I'm not going to take their advice on the other stuff. They even knew that. Like, for instance, like a back brace. By research, the back brace for the fractures does not heal you faster. It doesn't really make anything better, but it's there to maybe remind you not to make sharp movements. But I know that, so I'm like, not wearing it. They're like, oh, that goes against protocol. I'm like, not wearing it. show me the research. They're like, she's talking too much. She shouldn't be in ICU.
She's given us too much trouble for an ICU.
I know. She's like, you talk too much for an ICU patient. But another thing to know is when I was trying to call, the phone overheated multiple times. So, it was many things that happened. I have to write these things down. And then when the phone was working, the Wi-Fi just went out. I'm like, are you kidding me? So then the Wi-Fi went back on, and then I had to cool the phone underneath my body. And so, there were many things that happened, but I was like, we're going to make it. I just don't know how long it's going to be, but we're going to make it. It's another testament, like just never lose that focus of being like, I will make it and God is with me. And I think that helped me stay focused through everything because I was lucid and coherent through all of it, the entire thing. Wow. And, that doesn't always happen.
Tell me about, you started with this in your intro a little bit, but I would love for you to maybe also speak about the contrast of where you have been in some of those private meetings and some of those, because I believe, you're speaking about a belief system. You're speaking about the power of faith. You're speaking about God literally as a super physiological component of the human experience and life itself. And there are these forces out there that have a different belief system, that think they are God.
Yes.
That think that literally, I think I've heard you say that these people believe that they are God. Yeah. And could you speak to that side, just what exists in that kind of like demonic side of what is called healthcare, or what is called whatever at this point? Because I think it's important to draw the contrast of, in my opinion, the expert lens that you have being able to see virtually through both eyes,
Well, I can say that in these really extraordinary, it was a business owners meeting and a scientific meeting in particular, the topic of God did come up. And Craig Venter and Ray Kurzweil, they're transhumanists and genetic modification, etc. So Craig Venter said, what is God? God creates. Now we can create, so now we're gods. Gods, right? So
that's wild.
And, he even said they wanted to get credit for their work for synthesizing, for creating synthetic life, which means a synthetic gene, which is these injections have synthetic genes. So anything, including a human, can be patented and owned. And when that happened, there would be watermarks inside the gene. And one of the watermarks would be all of their names. There's 40 scientists right now that want their names in there. So we know one of them. I don't know the other 45. But even Ray Kurzweil says, when he's asked if there's a God, he said no, but soon there will be one. You see, listen to any of the transhumanists, they'll say the same thing. And also they believe in controlling and manipulating other humans at their will. And it's not in a loving way. It's in a very dark and a dehumanizing way. So, and then you look at who do they hang out with? They've been on Epstein's Island, like Gates and others. Epstein himself was into genetic modification and for doing synthetic genomics and creating hybrids. I mean, they're all together with MIT and these other Ivy League schools. So they believe in doing all these things. And what do? They know human trafficking and pedophilia. And so this is the group of people. So that's what they stand for. Look at their symbolism. It's everywhere. And they believe in the demonic realm. They believe, this goes back to Nazi Germany.
Yes.
Well, how did Hitler get all these technologies that we started to take on with the Paperclip Project? Well, the Vril and the Tool Society, black magic, and the occult, conjuring up demons. So you may not believe in it, but they do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
And so that is a dark supernatural thing that they're trying to use. Whether or not you believe in it, they do. So if they believe in it, I mean, really, to me, there's overwhelming proof that we have supernatural abilities, and there's the supernatural realm. We just can't always see it. But if that's what they do, what are we doing nothing? Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have proof that prayers work. We have proof of quantum physics that this exists, of the Masaru Emoto's work and all these other things. This is real stuff, Instead of using it for negative and bad, we need to stop being victims and know that who created us, who created in his image. It's beautiful. And this is a holy temple. We come from a divine royal birthright. That's why I walk with my head up high no matter what happens. You can't take anything away from me because I know who I am and what I am. And so that's being free. It's really being free.
Yeah.
It's a big learning lesson that all of us are going through right now. Is like, what do you want from this life? Because this life doesn't end when we die. We go on. I believe that wholeheartedly. There's an eternity out there. And I tell people this all the time. If you could spend 2 minutes in eternity, whether it was hell or heaven, I promise you would pray so much harder, worship more, sacrifice more, love more, do more, be more, because eternity is real. You wouldn't sit by and not do anything.
What does that world look like? I mean, thinking about who you are and just watching you serve, like stand up to serve and stand up with conviction and faith and this level of fierceness that I wish all doctors, all humans, alive today would, because we can, and because if we care about the future world, we should, but based upon the work that you are doing, based upon the purpose that you live with, based upon, the value set and the belief system that you have, what does the world look like that you're aiming to create?
Well, I do see a parallel world starting, right? Splitting off, because we have free will. Not everybody chooses the same thing. Mm-hmm. But in this parallel world, God is calling us to become spiritually mature, just like a good father would. You don't want your kid to stay a baby forever, right? Yeah. He's trying to say, stop being babies, stop being dependent on everything, and don't think of something always, just spoon feeding you. We're not supposed to be that way, because if we're creating His image, we're supposed to be, really embodying that and becoming owners and responsible and accountable and taking over dominion. Take the dominion over our world back that we gave up a long time ago. That's what I see. This is our world, our kids, our planet. Everything is ours. We take it back. No more of this. Mm-hmm. All gone. At least the people that want that. And it's going to be a place that we don't need too much medicine, but health will understand better, right? We'll understand our bodies better, how we're interacting with our environment, with each other, body, mind, and spirit, structure and function, that we can be teachers of health. And, health is easy. It's dis-ease. It's easy to be healthy, right? Yeah. And again, if we understand who and what we are, I believe in the whole Bible, like the book of Genesis said, when Adam and Eve messed up, their light bodies became animal skin. They got animal skin from our creator because they got demoted. I believe that. And if you understand our DNA, we are biophotonic beings. We are biologic light beings. And so if we understand who and what we are, we grow spiritually, we grow back into the bodies that we originally had, light bodies. That's what I see. So I told you this in that meeting. I remember that, the interview we did at the end. I said, I'm so excited. I see us just glowing and shining with light. And that is an amazing way to be, because we won't have that pain. We won't have that struggle to be healthy, the anxiety and depression, right? I believe in that. I believe we will see that in our lifetime.
It reminds me of, this interview reminds me of two things. One is with a recent interview we did with Mary Ruddick. She's this nutritionist, but also a medical anthropologist, and she still studies hunter-gatherers and fisher tribes and people that have been untouched by industry. And she says, from literal, not even birth to death, but conception and fertility and the vibrancy that actually is who we are, is far more vast and beautiful than we could even fathom or imagine. And it made me humbled, because I get to work with kids. I tell these stories and people are like, that's amazing, because we see kids speak for the first time, or we see kids that have chronic, crazy, sensitivities that they can't go anywhere. Parents just want to put them in a bubble and they can navigate the world with full freedom of their life, right? And we see these things, and I hear this model of what normal is, right? How we're made, what the design is, and it's miraculous and it's beautiful, but it's just normal. It's just the way that we're made, right?
You're right. Miracles should be an everyday common occurrence. And so I tell people, miracles aren't rare. They're amazing all the time. And I interviewed people that miracles happen with. Every single one of them said it was only when, with their whole being, not just your mind, your whole being, did you believe in it, that fortitude, did the miracle happen like that. Every time. That's the secret, is us. Understanding what and who we are, and that it can happen, it will happen.
And it's only because of our own limitations or belief in those limitations that exists. The other thing it reminds me of, have you heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yeah.
So Joe's story is it's a bike accident, but it's fractured vertebrae. He was right at a hospital right down the road from my office, and he in his own mind saw the remolding. He's a chiropractor. Saw the remolding of his vertebrae, and post X-rays are as if nothing ever happened. And
I can't wait to get my X-rays too. Yeah. I feel it. I feel the peeling in my bones, real time.
Does this open up maybe potentially the next, a different vision for the next chapter of who you are?
100%, because awesome. I got to be careful what I say, because I was saying, I'm really bored about talking about the same stuff. You got to be really careful what you say. God's like, really? Okay, well, I'll give you something, huh? And like I said, it all matters what your outlook is coming out from a trauma. I mean, it could have gone such a different way with a different mindset. I say this to people when I worked in the trauma unit. You would go through different things in residency, and we could tell the length of duration of or the duration of someone's recovery based on their mindset at that trauma. So different mindsets could determine how long of a recovery someone had. That's the power you have on yourself and your mind. And I know it's not easy, guys, but it does take practice. So, and you ask for help. You ask for divine intervention. There's nothing wrong with that. You ask for others' help. And yes, so what I felt over time too. It was like, I don't want to talk about the same thing. We keep saying how many bad things there are, but we're still not getting to the real solution. And I also knew the level of evil we were facing was beyond our human ability to solve it. So we need supernatural intervention. And Dr. Zev Zelenko said the same thing in one of the meetings I went to. He says, I've been looking through all the data too, all the science. He goes, we need a supernatural intervention. I'm like, absolutely. And we have it right here because we are connected with God if we choose. It's actually so easy. So that's my goal. Yeah. And it's all science too. That goes together hand in hand. They're not separate things. It's a beautiful thing to see science and spirituality come together.
It's I remember reading in chiropractic school, which is very odd because you go through chiropractic school and you expect it to be holistic, but it's really very medicalized in many respects. And I remember just showing my teachers, who are mostly medical doctors and PhDs, and you're just like, you show them research on something as simple as like a spontaneous remission, right? Yep. And the documented spontaneous remissions that exist in the world to the orders of hundreds of thousands, if not more.
Way
and
more.
They've actually, an organization called the Institute of Noetic Sciences actually documented like what were some of the common themes of these spontaneous remissions. And one of them is exactly like you said, the lens of the world that you view, literally how you view the world, your worldview and understanding, your belief system. But one of them was primarily, do you believe in something greater than yourself? Do you believe in some sort of higher source that is orchestrating symphonically, not just what is healing in you potentially, but maybe even like you're saying, orchestrating what happened to begin with as a key factor in sometimes the most chronic of cases of things having some sort of just what they say miracle, but it's actually like you're saying, it's how we're made. It's who we are. If we get out of our
we're supposed to be this way. This is
Yeah.
how we were always supposed to be. We just didn't. We have amnesia. We were, hypnotized, taught that that's not who we are, and we fell into that belief system. And now is the time of the awakening. And now what do you do? Because we have free will. That's why I believe people like, why don't these miracles happen just to everybody? Because it's hard to accept this because we have free will, and people don't understand that certain mindsets hold them back. And it's not easy to accept that maybe we all play a part in the hardships that we have. I try to always say, well, what did I do to get, and I've had lots of hardships and I'm sure they're not over. I try to always see, what did I do? It's not easy to do that though. It's humbling.
Yeah.
But you know what? You're sharpening yourself, right? You're finding yourself as you're going on and on and on. They're hard things, but then if you make them through, then you see, I'm grateful for them too.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing to witness, to bear witness to what you have been at work with. I know it's a longer career than the last 3 years or so, but it is one of the most inspiring to be of receiving of mentorship, whether you knew or not you were a mentor of mine. I appreciate you sharing that, because we do have, that's the thing, is when you recognize you do have dominion and you start to really truly own it and put everything in alignment with those more empowering, if not infinitely wise belief systems that have all these miracles at the end of. That's what freedom is. I think that's what you're sharing, and I hope that
that's when you become alive. That's when you're finally alive. And I gave up material things more than once, and I don't miss them really, because I wouldn't trade back that moment in time of where I was when I was, to me, more in the world. Of the world.
Yeah.
I just say that I'm passing through this world. I'm not. I feel like, like the Bible says, our citizenship is in heaven, passing through. I don't get caught up in this worldly stuff anymore. I'm not perfect at all. I got to always check myself, but I'm not like I used to be. Definitely. So I'm proud of that.
Dr. Madej, I'm so grateful for you. I appreciate your time, your expertise, your experience, your storytelling ability, your inspiration, because I know that of all the interviews that I've done, we've had some really remarkable interviews, but never have been so timely. Like, thank you for sharing with us so close to your your accident, aka if there were accidents, and at the same time, to be able to come almost full circle and create a foundation for what is to come for you in your next chapter of just your existence is a beautiful thing to be a part of. And I'm very, very grateful. And I know that this is going to echo through our community in such a powerful way. I really do appreciate you.
It's always my pleasure to be with you and speak with you. So you're like a kindred spirit with me. So thank you.
All right, my lady. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for your time.
You too. Thank you.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of the Future Generations podcast. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as more ways to inspire a brighter future for you and your family, visit us at thefuturegen.com. That's all available exclusively on thefuturegen.com.